This is The Book of Life, a podcast that uncovers life lessons from Judaism's most important book, helping you power your day with purpose. Here is Ruchi Koval.
I often get questions from parents who are approaching their child's bar or bat mitzvah, asking what would be appropriate to include in their speech on their child's special day. It's hard to know what kind of message to give our kids on this important milestone. Our son's bar mitzvah took place on February 1st, 2020, a month before COVID shut the world down. We had over 400 people in the sanctuary that day, and in retrospect, it was probably a vicious super spreader. But what did we know then? So on Friday night, as we were enjoying the company of our extended family for Shabbat dinner, I got up to speak. I really had only one message that I wanted to share, a message of gratitude. Of course, there were a million things that I wanted to say to my son, and God willing, I will have many more years to share them with him. But on that night, my overriding emotion was one of gratitude. I shared my gratitude for all the people in my life who have helped me to get to where I am. But when it came time to thank my parents and in-laws, I struggled with this inadequacy that I felt for the task at hand. How does one thank their parents for 40 plus years of love and support? So I decided to take a page from the Torah's playbook. I went all the way back to the beginning of my life and thanked our parents for giving us life, for raising us, for giving us an education, for giving us a Jewish education, for supporting us through our adolescence and early adulthood, for continuing to support us and our family till today. It felt really good to go back to the beginning and reclaim the history of our relationship, tracing all the beautiful aspects. I think part of the reason this is so important is because we so often get bogged down by the intricacies and struggles in our relationships with our nearest and dearest. If there's someone in your life with whom you are close, chances are you're sometimes going to get on each other's nerves. The only relationships in which we will experience no conflict are our relationships that are shallow, relationships with acquaintances, because these relationships are not consequential to us, and therefore we don't really care that much about them. But relationships with people whom we genuinely care about will inevitably spark offense or disappointment some of the time. So it's so important in those relationships to periodically reclaim the history of the relationship and remind yourself of all the good, being as specific as possible in your gratitude and not get bogged down by the temporary setbacks and struggles. In our Torah portion this week, Moses does exactly this with the Jewish people and God. If you trace the stories of the Jewish people during their 40 years in the desert, you will definitely encounter a lot of conflict. The Jewish people struggled in their faith. They committed the sin of the golden calf. They made the mistake of sending spies into the land of Israel instead of trusting God that it was good as is. They complained about the miraculous food, the manna, and they complained about being thirsty. They rebelled against Moses, and they complained about having left Egypt. And God punished them for their misdeeds. There was so much conflict and struggle that it would be easy to lose sight of the bigger story of the relationship between God and the Jewish people. So in this Torah portion, Moses reminds the Jewish nation of God's commitment to them, of his kindnesses to them. He tells the Jewish people this, quote, "You have seen everything that God did before your eyes in the land of Egypt, to Pharaoh and to all his servants in his land, the great trials that your eyes beheld, those great signs and wonders. I led you for 40 years in the wilderness. Your garment did not wear out from on you, and your shoe did not wear out from on your foot. Bread you did not eat, and wine or intoxicant you did not drink, so that you would know that I am God. You shall observe the words of my covenant, and you shall perform them so that you will succeed in all that you do." The truth is, this is exactly what we do at the Passover Seder. When we sit down in our annual Jewish celebration of our exodus from Egypt, we retrace our nation's story going all the way back, not just to Abraham, but to Abraham's father, Terach. We declare that Abraham's father worshipped idols, but Abraham nevertheless found his way to God. And we trace our story down through Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Jacob's children, Joseph and his brothers, and our nation's descent to Egypt. We reclaim the history of our relationship with God and remind ourselves how many times he saved us and cared for us and rescued us. Although as a nation we've experienced thousands of years of conflict and struggle, God always saves us and always brings us back from the brink of extinction. God has allowed us to re-experience our nation settling in the land of Israel. It's so important to do this, to go back to the beginning of our relationship with God, because the Jewish people have experienced so much turmoil, not just in our 40 years in the desert, but in thousands of years of Jewish history. It's easy to miss the pattern that has been there all along, that God has always and will always have our back. It's imperative that we remind ourselves to take a look at the bigger story of miraculous Jewish survival. What if we could remember to do this in our relationships with our parents, with our spouses, with our friends? It's so easy to take relationships for granted because we just get used to whatever is working. The squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? And the one that's turning smoothly gets no notice at all. And so we forget to look at our relationships and to appreciate all the good. But what if we could use birthdays and anniversaries as an opportunity to remind ourselves and our loved ones of our relationship history and to give the proper gratitude and appreciation for the patterns of goodness and loyalty that have been there all along? Our lives are so busy, and if we're not actively connecting the dots of our history, we can blink and miss it. When Moses tells the Jewish people about the relationship with God, they needed that important reminder. So let's recommit ourselves to learning from Moses and doing the same thing in our own lives. Stop, pause, look back, reclaim the history of your relationships, and make sure not to miss what's there right in front of your eyes and has been the whole time.
This is the Book of Life. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to Momentum Podcasts on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Join Ruchi again next time for more meaning and inspiration from Judaism's most important book, to power your day with purpose.
You're listening to a Momentum Podcast. For unlimited inspiration, wisdom, and empowerment, visit MomentumUnlimited.org.